All right. I think it's still 5 minutes left, but we'll quickly get started. Hi, everybody. My name is Ron Hussain. I'm one of the technical experts at Soft, and I'll be your presenter for today's webinar. I can already see some people have joined in, so that's really good. There are a few minutes left, 4 to 5 minutes, before we officially get started and actually start the webinar. So in the meantime, I would like to have a confirmation from one of you guys, or if all of you can confirm. If you can see me through webcam, you could see me, you see my screen as well. And if you can hear me fine, just post into the questions tab. That's the way you could actually ask questions. But for now, just use that and confirm if you can hear me fine and see my screen without any issues. So please give me a confirmation and we'll quickly get started. All right, very good. So I've got a couple of confirmations. So that's good enough. So we'll wait for some more time and then we'll officially get started with the presentation. Okay, we had a webinar yesterday as well, and I spent quite a lot of time in explaining different performance and monitoring options. Uh, Today, I would like to have a different spin on it where I would explain performance and monitoring options, but I would also like to talk about the scenarios. I would focus more on the hands-on portion, the demo of these monitoring aspects. So this is what I have in mind today, but like I said, we'll wait for some more time and then we'll officially get started. In the meantime, all right, let me just quickly set up our environment that I plan on using. So this is our demo 1, and then I will quickly go to demo 2 and have that set up as well. Some more people have joined in. Thank you very much for joining. Um, this is a new environment, so still using the remote desktop for that. All right, so I think we're all set. Very good. All right, guys. For those of you who would like to know more details about the format of this webinar, this is typically a listen-only webinar, which essentially means that I do most of the talking, and I cover different details around our topic that we have selected today. But you can always participate. You could stop me whenever you need to. You can ask as many questions as you need to, and for that, you can use the questions tab within the GoToMeeting. On the right side of your screen, there is this GoToMeeting panel, and on that GoToMeeting panel, there is a questions tab. So expand on it and post a question. That tab is open right in front of me, so I'll keep an eye on that and I'll answer as many questions as possible. So please keep them coming. Post as many questions as you need to, and we'll keep an eye and take it from there. For those of you who would actually like to join in, there is an audio option as well. So for that, you would have to again post into the questions tab, and you would have to let me know that you would actually ask a question using the microphone. So I'll quickly give you access, and then you can ask a question where other people would actually be able to hear you as well. I'm not too sure if somebody unmuted it, themselves, but please don't do it. I will control it from here. So for now, if everybody can mute themselves, we can get started. So there's 1 more minute. I think it's safe time to get started. A lot of people have joined in. I can see quite a lot of attendees. Thank you very much for joining. All right, so let's get started with this. Hi everyone, my name is Ron Hussain. I'm one of the technical experts at Soft. I specialize in product demonstrations. I present solutions. I'm also a technical account manager, which essentially means that whenever you download our product, and if you're interested in getting to know about our features, the use cases, or if you find any issues, you can get in touch somebody like me, and we could actually help drive the NCache evaluation process from that point onwards. So this is what I typically do. The topic that we've selected today is NCache health and performance monitoring. So basically, I'll be covering different monitoring options within NCache in this particular webinar, and I'll tackle it in two different ways. I'll talk about health related options that you can utilize, and then performance monitoring, and that's application performance as well as NCache server side performance. This is an NCache based topic, so I would assume that you already know some details about NCache, and I'll share some basic details as well. But agenda of today's webinar is that we have a specific topic in hand. It is about NCache, and I'll expose NCache features in regards to health and performance monitoring. So let's get started with this. And for those of you who've just joined, please use the questions tab for asking any questions that you may have. I'll keep an eye on it, and I'll answer as many questions as possible. So please keep them coming. All right, so first starting point is NCache deployment. Like I said, I would assume that NCache is already set up, but if it's not, this is a typical deployment for NCache. We have a server tier where we have multiple servers residing, and then we have application tier, which is actually connecting to this in a client server model. So you could use a separate caching tier where servers are dedicated for caching, and then your applications can run on their own respective tier. These could be ASP.NET Web Applications, Web Forms, or MVC, ASP.NET Web Services, or Java Web Services, WCF, or any other, or it could be any backend server applications which are all connecting to NCache. So whenever you have such a deployment in hand where you have a caching from NCache and then your applications are connecting to NCache, there could be multiple questions in regards to what is cached, what is the throughput, what is the performance matrices, what is the performance gain with different object sizes, or if there are any issues, how to debug that. So that's all what I'm going to cover today. I'm going to talk about different logs, different health related events that you can capture, NCache monitoring features in regards to health. I'll talk about different debug logs that you can set up, and on top of it I'll give you a performance comparison as well. So all of this is bundled into this webinar. A lot is going to come, and everything is hands-on, so I'll show you these demos while I'm discussing these features. So please stay tuned and ask as many questions as you need to. Without further ado, let's actually get started. Uh, this is NCache server requirement. We typically cover this in our regular demos and webinars. Uh, so it's 8 cores or more. That is a minimum recommended setup for NCache, but you could have more cores as well. RAM is as per your use case, 16 GB or more. It's supported on all Windows environments as well as NCache server portion is concerned. It is recommended that you use 2012 or 2016, but it can work on older versions as well, such as 2008 operating system. .NET 4.0 or later, 4.6.1 or 4.6.2 or 4.5, that's most commonly used. And remote clients can be on any framework, again on any Windows environment. 32-bit and 64-bit, all environments are supported as well. So having said that, I'll quickly jump and get started with this. I'll quickly create a demo environment, and for that I'll be using 2 nodes and a few clients to connect to it. And again, I would use an assumption that I would not share a lot of details on how to create a cache, what are the configurations, what are the topologies. I would assume that you already know that detail. If you don't, in that case, please find our architectural webinars or our architectural demos that we do every month as part of NCache or as part of technology webinars that we do. So I'll be using ASP.NET Web Application as well as a console application which comes installed with NCache. So that's what I have in mind. So basically this is what I'll quickly do. So get started with this. I'll log on to my demo environment. There's a cache that I've already configured. So I'll just create a new project, and then you create the caches. So I'll just create a demo cache, and this is the cache that I'll be using for all the performance and monitoring, health related monitoring aspects of NCache. I'll choose partition replica cache. That's our most popular one, so I would recommend that you also choose this. And then async, that is the mode of replication between servers. And again, demo 1 and demo 2. All of these steps are documented in great details in our existing webinars and demos that you can look up at our website. So this is how you specify the servers, TCP port for communication, and then the size of the cache cluster. I have something in mind in terms of getting notified when cache becomes full and how to react to that. So and I'll just turn off evictions for now, or just keep it turned on. uh, Actually, let's turn it off because I would actually showcase how cache becomes full and what is needed in that scenario. Evictions is a way when cache becomes full, it automatically makes room for the new items by removing some items from the cache. So let's not do that. Choose finish, and that has created our cache. I'll quickly add my box as a client, which is my personal computer right here. I need to check if NCache service is started or not. I've been fiddling around with the environment, so please bear with me. Uh, it may, yeah, it started, so I think it's added as well. So, all right, so let's actually get started. So our environment is set up. Ignore the test cache for now because I was playing around with it. Just focus on demo cache. I've clicked on it. You see on the right pane, these are all the settings for this particular cache. It's not started as yet, so I'll quickly start this so that both servers are started. When you use the start button from here, or from here, it actually starts cache on all the caching servers. And then next, I'll actually start with some basic steps: how to know your cache is started, how to know it's healthy, and how to know if it's showing activity. So these are some basic steps that we will take right now, and then we'll build on top of it. We'll progress into it by taking it to some extensive levels, some advanced levels. And please keep your questions coming, right? So ask as many questions as you need to. All right, very good. So cache has been started. So first step that you could use from the manager or from the command line. And by the way, all of this can be done through command line as well. So it's not just the GUI tools. There are command line tools which are equally equipped in comparison to GUI. I will right click, and in order to check the health of the cache cluster, I would open a view cluster connectivity box. That actually gives me an idea about fully connected status. Each server has an active and a backup. Let me show you a diagram for that real quick because I've chosen a topology. Uh, so we have this partition replica cache, and architecture is that you have an active partition where data exists, and then there is a passive partition where replica of another server is maintained. So server one's active, backup on two. Server two is active, backup on one. These are actives, these are passives. These only become active when this goes down, right? So if this goes down, you would have this becoming active, and if this goes down, you have the backup becoming active. So each server has two partitions. We have two servers, we would have four partitions, and this is exactly what you're seeing here. So one is connected to its own backup, other servers active, and other servers backup, and server 2 is connected to its own to 107, which is the other servers backup, and its own backup. It's in an increasing pattern, and it's fully connected as well. If you see now, let me just share some details. The status message can be not connected, or partially connected, or cache service is not started. So all of these mean that there is some issue with the cache cluster. So until or unless you see the fully connected status, your cache is not started properly. So that's the first building point. When you create a cache, start it. Make sure you check the fully connected cache status. And this output can be used through list caches as well. That's a tool which comes. Let me just bring it here. List caches, and if you run the list caches with /a, if you just run it with, it would just give you the local information that demo cache is started. But if you just do it with list cache /a switch, it actually gives you that the cluster size is 4, 107 ports, 107 the 7802 for the backup, 108, 7807, and 708, and count. And so this gives a healthy indication of it. So you have to look up this information if you use list caches. Otherwise, view cluster connectivity gives you this in a GUI manner. Each cache has a cache host process. So you have the cache host process for demo cache as well as for demo cache 2. And you could actually see if you add a detailed, for example, inside the description of this, you could actually see the associated cache as well. I think it's in the command line, but if you could add a command line, column here, you could actually see the cache name. But we usually rely on the process IDs because that's what matters to us. And I'll explain more on this in coming slides. So having said that, our cache seems to be up and running. So that's our first building point. Next is how to check the activity on the cache, basic activity, if cache is taking requests or not. So for that, you could just right click and choose statistics. This would open perf month counters, and these are server side counters, which you see in the NCache manager, but you could also see the client side counters as well, which I'll cover in great details. I have a scenario that I'll show you with different varying object sizes. I'll show you the client side averages and how those get impacted. So that's something that I have lined up towards the end of this webinar. So that's coming up as well. But just to show you the basic side of the things, let me just bring it right here. You have demo cache and the replica, demo cache and the replica. No activity is being generated at this point because we're not running any tests. So we'll have to do that. And for that, I can just run, since I've added my box as a client, I'll run the command line tool to get started with this. It can take different parameters as well, but for now, I'll just use some basic values for it, and you could see the requests per second already coming in. So we have server 1 taking requests, backup is not taking requests, but count is being updated. But server 2 is taking requests, you could see it right here. And then we have the backup of server 2, which is actually backup of server 1. Backup partition is being lined up. So this actually gives us another confirmation that cache is running fine. Requests are evenly distributed. You could see this request per second counter right here. And we have the backups being updated as well. So our first step, basic monitoring as far as health is concerned, is something which revolves around this. And then we can advance from this point onwards. We could see what are the issues going on with the cache. We could get notified, and I'll talk more details around that. Any questions so far? I hope it's pretty basic, but please let me know if there are any questions at this point. I'm assuming that there are no questions, so I'll quickly get get ahead and get started with the monitoring options within NCache. So this is what I've lined up. Yesterday, I spent a lot of time on explaining these, and then I got a feedback that we should focus more on the hands-on portion, hands-on side of the things. So this is what I will do today. Like I said, I will use a different spin on this webinar today. So we have perf month counters, we have server side and client side. I'll show you those. We have event log entries, and using these event log entries, we have this monitoring tool which gives you alerts. We have this email alerts which give you email related alerts, and then you could also use a third-party tool to hook onto these event logs. So these are pretty extensive, and I would say most important factor when it comes to the monitoring aspect of NCache. And then we have the logs. There are multiple ways you could configure logs. We have server-side logs, client-side logs. There is a separate tool called log analyzer. Then there's a data analyzer tool with the help of link pad integration. And then we have the API logs as well, which can actually demonstrate how much time individual calls are taking, and it's just a plug and play option. And like I said, we have third-party integrations. You could use SCOM to hook onto these logs, to hook onto these event log entries. And then we have App Dynamics or any other third-party tool, and you could use NCache for that. So like I said, I spent half an hour yesterday explaining these. Today I'm just going to use the actual demo of different avenues. So let's get started with NCache monitor tool, which comes installed with NCache. Now that you have a request set up, let me actually go to another client, and let's actually use a server box. Server can also use a client, so you could actually see that. Let's run a stresses tool from here, and then let's run a stresses tool from here as well, so that we have significant, I would call it significant load, as far as requests per seconds are concerned, and you could see about 1500 requests per second, and now 2000 plus requests, about three, close to two, between 2 and 3000 requests per second by server 1 and server 2. Now the basic monitoring requirements for real time as well as for logging, that can be covered through our monitoring tool. You don't have to look anywhere else. You don't have to review the logs. You don't have to go into event logs or hook onto any third-party tools. There is a tool which comes installed with NCache. So I would recommend that you use it as is, and I'll give you a quick demo of that particular tool. I will right click and choose monitor cluster, and this would open the NCache monitor tool, which comes installed with NCache. Now, nice thing about this is that it monitors your servers as well as the clients, and it doesn't have to be one of the servers or the clients. It could be a third box into your network. It doesn't have to be any of the cache deployments. So we have 107, 108, and 3 clients. My box is has some rules, so it does not allow remote monitoring, but you would be able to see 108 and 107 counters. And all you need to do is go to the view, make sure these server and client dashboards are checked. My box would error out, that is expected, should have opted it out. But you could see the same connectivity box showing fully connected status. And by the way, if there would be any change, it would change it in real time. That's the beauty of this monitor tool, that it exhibits all the states in real time. CPU graph for CPUs, server 1 and server 2 are listed here. Network graph, if there would be any network activity, that would be shown here. Cache size graph, and then request per second graph. So there isn't any huge activity going on at this point as far as size and network is concerned. So you're seeing about almost zero values. But as far as requests per second, you could see about it's a factor of 1000, so about 3000 requests per second by server 1 as well as by server 2, and we have the memory going up as well. So this actually explains that server 1 and server 2 are utilizing, and that there are 3 clients which are connected to it. And then you could see the client dashboard as well. So 108 and 107 are clients, and you're seeing that they're sending read requests, and there is an activity as well. So this covers the real-time monitoring aspect of these are some pre-configured dashboards, but you don't have to rely on these. You could actually take one step ahead, and you can create your own dashboards, and that's where the fun begins. I'll just say my dash. Let me just do one thing just to actually have it more robust. Let me just show you another way of opening the monitor tool. You could also open the monitor tool from here directly. All you need to do is pick the server, and it will be a remote server as well, and you just specify the name of the cache. So that's another way you actually specify. And now you could see the same. Now we have 2 clients because I've closed 1 client. Now you would see actually more activity as far as CPU requests, because we have only 2 servers and 2 clients. Now coming back, you can create your own dashboards in NCache monitoring tool. And by the way, these are all performance counters. I am actually going to show you the performance monitor tool as well, where you could actually achieve the same using Windows performance monitoring as well. So if you are comfortable with that, use that. If you would just like to use NCache monitor tool, which comes installed with NCache, that's another excellent choice. And by the way, this is a real-time view. Let me just create this dash. So creating your own dashboard means that you would have an empty panel. Let's use 2 by 2 column, and this would be utilized for any of the performance counters that you see on the left side of the screen. You have CPU usage on the server side, event logs, cluster health, write operations, item count, and so far so good. Everything is listed here. And then you have the client side counters as well. So it gives you server side and client side personalized monitoring. And on top of it, this also gives you a perfmon control that you can actually drag and drop right here. So you could add any performance counter. It could be Windows performance counters, it could be memory, .NET CLR memory, CPU, any sort of performance related counters or health related counters for NCache can be added here. And I'll talk about those in some detail. Alright, so I'll just create another dash so that we have 2 dashboards. Let's call it dash 2. and let's say 2 by 2 is the size. That's the standard. Okay, so while we're at it, I'll quickly show you first dashboard, and I'll show you the client processes which are connected to it. So this gives you an overview of all the client processes which are currently connected to my cache. So you could come here, use this window, use the client IP, process ID, port they're connected to, server IP they're connected to, and bytes sent and received. So if you see a heavy activity from one of the client applications, you could actually see the connection here as well. There could be a connection broken. You would always see one process ID connected to all the servers. So 4016 is connected to 107. 4016 is also connected to 108. So if there are any connection issues, for example, your worker process got started, there were 3 servers in the cache, and one of the worker processes could not connect to server 3. So how to know about it? First of all, there are events that are triggered, and I'll talk about those shortly. So that's an explicit way of getting notified. But you see, if there is an abnormal behavior, if there is a slowness, or if there is an extended amount of requests, because if a server is not connected by the client would send requests to other servers, and those would reroute that request to that other server, and that can take time. So you can come onto this screen and then pick the IP. You could sort it with the process ID and then see if there is a connection which is not listed here. The other way would be the number of clients. So one of the servers would be having less number of clients listed in this window in comparison to others. So that's one important tool I wanted to show. And then you could see some personalized fetches per second being done, additions per second being done, and then on the dash 2 you could come to the client side, and then you could see the network usage of the client, CPU usage of the client that you'd usually not see in the pre-configured dashboards. So this is again for the real-time monitoring. What about the historical data? What about logging? So that is also built into this tool. Excuse me. So you could actually come here and start logging, and this would actually, and then you could also schedule some logging as well, and you could also choose to show replicas here if that's a requirement. And then there are a few options that you can play around. For example, pick the sample rate, use the graph, and then use the event logs that you actually want to see inside the cache. So this gets you the real-time monitoring, as I mentioned. If the request load is coming in, you would see these, and you could expand on this particular time, the time it takes to populate, and the window of these individual dashboards that can be changed as well. And like I said, there's a logging support to go with it. So that covers the basic demo of NCache monitoring tool, and I've given you some details on some use cases such as checking the health, checking the client connectivity, the request would be added here as well, and you would also see the activity on the server. So this is your client and this is your server exhibiting the request load, and on top of it you have the connectivity, uh, you know uh, client process statistics and connectivity, and then you also have client activity as well as network and CPU usage. You would not see network utilized quite heavily because it's not very network intensive at the moment, or there could be some permission issues that this dashboard is not being being published. So we'll look into that. But so far so good. Everything looks as it should, where we're having some activity, and we have the clients and servers interacting with one another in a healthy manner. Any questions so far? So this completes our NCache monitor tool demo, which comes installed with NCache. So any questions on that? I hope this was pretty straightforward, but if there are any questions, please let me know. All right, so I'll just close the monitoring tool, and I'll keep the stress test tool running. I ought to use a web application as well, but that's something that I'll do at a later stage. Okay, next I'll show you some health related alerts, and for that I must explain the event log entries that get that become part of your system and get regularly updated each time you have an event. So let's go to Windows event log. NCache is it actually heavily writes and that's specific to any of the events. For example, we started a cache, and each event log for a system is specific to its own server, the view of the cache, the events of NCache service, or the cache host for that server. So we started cache. So first thing is that a separate process gets initiated. So that's what happened here. Next event log is that it's replica joined. So it started and it's replica joined, and then you would have demo cache started successfully on the cache as well. And then 108 joined to the cache, 108 replica joined to the cache, and then these are some configuration messages which we can skip, and that's about it. So these are not related to NCache, but as far as these messages are concerned, so it gave you a full information about the event log. And let me just quickly simulate a scenario where we actually use a test cache here, and that's why it's here. I'll just start one of the caches. Since I'm on 107, so I'll just start 107, and you would see some event logs being propagated uh, in regards to that. So let's wait once this completes. So it started again. You could use the view cluster connectivity, and you could see that only one service started, but 108 does not have any status. It's not connected because cache is stopped. Right, so that you can do, and you could also monitor it separately if needed using the monitor cluster. Now coming back to the event logs, so now that we have done that, there should be test cache started, but before that test cache process got initiated, and then we have 107 replica. So what happens is each time you start a cache, uh, the cache process gets initiated, so there's an event log entry for that, and then there is a replica. The actual box starts, actual cache starts, and its replica joins the cache cluster, and you have the information added as part of it. And there's a data collector set that actually gets initiated, but currently in my machine, I've turned those off, so that's why we're getting the error. And test cache started successfully. That's the event that you should be interested in. And after that, your application. Then there are event IDs that you can hook onto and use any other tool, or use NCache monitor for that, or any other tools to get notified around that. So these are event logs. Now, since these are published to Windows, each time your cache gets started, it gets stopped, and I'll show you that I add another node to it. You wouldn't get notified via event logs, and if I stop the cache, I would get notified via event logs. If your cache becomes full, you would get notified. If state transfer starts, network glitches occur, if two servers break connectivity, each time you would have these updated events, and you would actually take it from there. So again, 107 has joined, cache started successfully, and now 108 has joined to the test cache, and 108 replica has joined to the test cache. So these are events which are again logged, and event ID remains the same, but the message is important, so you get notified. And I'll quickly stop the cache, and you would see the event logs again being populated. So most of our third-party monitoring is in regards to these. Okay, there's a question, and that's a very good question. Are NCache replica and active present in the same process? Yes. For a given cache on one box, for example, we have a cache right here. So for 107, if I open the task manager, there's a replica. So our replica and the active and the replica for one server, for one cache, for test cache, would reside in the same process. And you would have the same cache, similar cache host process on the other box, and it would have its own active and backup for one cache. That's a good question, by the way. So thank you very much for asking questions. Please keep them coming, so that I know where to direct my discussion. But it's good to have questions. Okay, so now that we have stopped the cache, I'll again do a refresh, and you would see some information. And these are warnings, right? Because your replica joined, and then node 102 has left the test cache. So that's an alarming situation, because you stopped it, or it could be something which goes down on its own. So in that case, you would get notified. And then we have another 108 replica going down, and then the main 107 replica has gone down. and then that's another entry. You should ignore it, and test cache stopped successfully. So in a normal scenario, when you stopped it, you would get this safe event as well, although there are warnings. But if it goes down, you would see the verbosity level, the error level would change to error. It would not be warning, or it would not be information anymore. Our separate process of test cache has been stopped as well. So these are the pieces of information that you should look into using Windows event logs. And if there are any third-party monitoring, for example, we had a customer who was using App Dynamics, and we helped them turn these events on. So all they needed to do was turn NCache event logging by using the event ID. So you get in touch with us, we give you a list of all the events which NCache logs, and you take it from there. Use a third-party monitoring tool to monitor NCache as well. So I'll close this down. Now coming back to our NCache features, um, we exhibit, we push information into event logs, but we didn't wait over there. We actually implemented our own alerting system as well, and that was based on uh, these features. It's called email alerts. Now all you need to do is enable email alert on a cache, and you could do it on a running cache as well. And I can put my details here, for example, ron@alachsoft.com. It's something that I have to check from here. It's smtp.gmail. I'm just using my personal and provide the port as well. Let's keep this information, and I will just use my login, and I'll use our recipient. I'll just send an email to myself, and I'll just say cache start or cache stop. Size becomes full. Cluster goes into a split brain. It gets broken. State transfer, which is a process each time a node joins or leaves, the other server have to either redistribute data, or make the backups active. So that's the scenario: node join or node leave, right? So you could get notified, and all you need to do is come here and apply configurations. I would not actually do this for my cache, this cache right here. I've already done that for test cache, and I've all the events set up. I'll just say apply configurations, and I'll show you this with the help of an example. So I'll just start this, right? I've only started 107, and I'll bring back the event logs, and if I just refresh it, there are a few information. So started successfully, 107 has joined, test cache started successfully, and you can ignore the error message. Now what about the email alert? So for that, I'll have to come back to my machine right here, and I'm expecting an email should be launched. Please ignore this one. um, so you would get the same event in the form of email alerts, but this time NCache is consuming those events and sending an email alert to the recipients who have subscribed for it. So you could see that first alert, actually there are many alerts. So we have 107 joined the test cache. Then I'll just use this window right here, don't have to open it. Started successfully, 108 joined. Actually these are some old events, so let me just use 1133. Yeah, these are the ones, because these alerts were open, so I was doing testing, so based on that. Okay, so let's focus on 1133. So 107 replica has joined, and then test cache started successfully. So I'll come back here and quickly start 108 and show you that this would actually trigger an email alert and event log entries side by side. Now this is our own implemented SMTP, but behind the scenes we're using the event logs, right? So you can also do that. Again, I'll just refresh here. There are entries, right? So 106 and 106 again logged twice. And if I come back here and do a send receive over here, I should be able to get 2 more emails, or even more, because I have state transfer and other events as well. If there was some data in the cache, you would have those events as well. So there you go. So 108 test cache started. Uh, Test cache started successfully, and this was for 108, right? So I'll just do a send receive one more time to make sure that there are no more emails. So you can notify your system admins in case of any issues. And let's actually simulate an issue. What if node 2 goes down, right? Or if there was a connection breakage. We can't really simulate connection breakage here, but we can simulate node going down, and I've just done that. So first of all, it would actually show you the event in event log. There are warnings, right? And let's see if the email alert picks up these or not. I hope it's pretty straightforward. I'm just highlighting some of the basic features that you can just use and get the environment monitor as far as health is concerned. So you could actually see that the node left, and then 1007 event log has been generated. So you could put a list of recipients here as needed, or it could be a group, but make sure that you specify one recipient per line. All right, so the other should be support at alachisoft.com, right? Or it could be cal at alachisoft.com. So you could actually take it from there. That's how simple it is to get started with the email alerts. Please let me know if there are any questions so far. So far we've covered NCache monitor tool. We've covered event logs. We've covered NCache email alerts. Next is NCache logs. That's something which is slightly an advanced topic, but I'll spend as much time as possible on the logs, and we can take it from there. Okay, there's a question. Can you have an email sent when the cache max? Of course, that's something which is doable, and I actually would do that. So how about we do that once we experiment with the cache size? Let's actually do that. It's not something that we could. Let's start the cache, and I will actually talk about two scenarios here. Now that you've asked question around it, what I'll do is I'll simulate. I'll use a smaller cache size. Let's say 30 MB, right? Or you know what? I can also do it for. Okay, there's a question. Can email alerts be configured for cache servers without internet access? Uh, I'm not too sure on that. I think you need to access your SMTP server. So for that, you would need access to that server at least. But if that's something which is available without internet access, please check on that. This is something that I have to confirm. But you can experiment with this. Usually, it would require internet access, so not too sure on that. But that's something I would verify. So I have a cache running, right? So cache size, I'm just going to choose the size and 30 MB and choose hot apply configurations, and a right click and choose actually let's use test cache. Sorry about that. 30 MB, 20 MB would be a even better size. Hot apply configurations, and then I'll just say monitor cluster to make sure that the size actually gets applied. And for test cache, server dashboard, so we have 20 MB showing here, no clients connected, and let's simulate some clients. Since email alert is set up, I'll just open a new stress test tool instance for this. I'm sorry, and say test cache, and this time I'll use one of the parameters to control the size of the object. It usually it uses 1 kilobyte average object size, but today I'll use 1024 into 1000, so that would just simulate 1 megabyte worth of load. Let's see how that goes. There you go. So cache size is growing up. It would keep doing that, and if I'm not mistaken, I had set up the evictions to be off we didn't. Okay, so let's see how it goes. So it would reach to the top, and there you go. There is an event already logged 1016. That's event logs, by the way. NCache monitor is also hooked onto these event logs, but it would never become full because it has evictions turned on. But I would actually show you 1016 if that email alert gets logged here or not. There you go. So has 80% of allocated cache size. So it doesn't wait for cache becoming full. It actually generates an event around 80%. And each time you do that, it would keep raising that. So based on this test, we would keep getting this, right? Because we have evictions turned on. And if you notice, cache becomes full and comes down, becomes full and comes down. And if I come back here, again, the same scenario, it would be actually listed for this cache as well. So we have the warnings going on as well. I hope that helps. I should not actually keep it running. So please let me know if there are any other questions. All right, so let's see on the time. We have 20 minutes. I think we're good. Next topic that I have is around NCache logs, right? So there are I'll cover performance monitoring. So I'll spend 10 minutes on NCache logs and last 10 minutes on NCache performance counters, server-side performance counters, client-side performance counters, and a scenario to go with it, so that you have a understanding around it. So I can close this down. Okay, NCache logs. Again, I'll stop this cache because test cache is the one which I've been using. Um, and in the meantime, while this is stopping, let me just open an application. I'm sorry about the folder structure. I copied it from another environment, so all right. So let me just open my Visual Studio. I don't need it for this section, but I will just keep it open so that I'm prepared while I'm waiting for cache to be stopped and show you the logging capabilities within NCache. Open a website. This is awfully slow for some reason. Okay, I'll wait for it. In the meantime, let me come back here. I think it's because of the Visual Studio. Should not have done that. Anyways, let me see if I can close it down. All right, so coming back to this, we have the test cache stopped, right? So I'll show you the logging capabilities within NCache. So logs are maintained, and these are cache logs. I can just get rid of these, at least these. The caches which are started, you would actually not be able to delete those. So I'll just start fresh. These are the running caches. Don't delete your log files. I just did it for this particular demo. Uh, I'll start one node here and show you the log files which are created on the server side and give you some details around it. Understanding the log files would need some advanced information about the clustering, about the framework of NCache. So I'll just talk about some basics. Now that we have created a cache, started the cache, test cache and replica have instantiated. So I'll use this opportunity to actually open the logs tool, log viewer tool. So if you go to the bin tools GUI, there is this log viewer tool which comes installed with NCache. You could use any notepad tool, WordPad, Notepad, Notepad++, but this is something that can actually help you sort it with thread, timestamp, logger level, and pinpoint the message as well. So I'll just open, it takes you to the same directory. I'll open the test cache here, and you could see all the logs which are there. So we have, and this is a very interesting tool, by the way. You could use different fields, node, right? And then you could provide filter based on that. So a filter is specified here. So I'll just show you some basic details. So we have operating parameters 107, 7805. The replica would always be 7806. Whatever you specify the port, the next is for the replica. So it installs the view. It's the first server, so 7805 is the only server. So each time a server starts, it talks to the clustering layer and gets the view. So it installs using itself as a coordinator, and you see that 7805107 is using its own view ID is 0. And then member joined event. These are again event logs which are related. And then you see a lot of info messages here, and then the replica must have joined here 7805, and you could see now it has joined 107 with 7806. So the replica has joined. So each server starts up, it tries to find out what other servers are available. If there are no servers available, it would start as a first server, and then it would start its replica and make a one node cache cluster. And then you would see cache some state transfer events, and then cache initialize, it started successfully. So here before this event, if you see some error messages like these, don't worry about it, because it's trying to connect to other servers, and those other servers may not be there as yet, because 108 is not started as yet. So it did try to connect to it, but it didn't get any response to it. And at this point I'll come here quickly, and I'll use the stress test tool, new instance of it. I'll show you the client connectivity event as well. And by the way, all the event logs, all the Windows email alerts that we set up are still intact, right? So let me just close it down and come back. And like I said, you could open it through Notepad++ as well. Just open the same tool with Notepad. Now, same log file is opened, but this time, since we started a client as well, towards the end you would see a client connected box as well. Let me just bring it here. So there is a demo 2, the IP of the box, the name of the box, a GUID, and a process ID is connected to the cache. So one server, and you would see client connected. Now a scenario could be that how to know if there is any issue in the cache. So you would see error messages after this point. That's an indication of the error. Error messages before this is just a discovery. So those are pretty normal until, or unless you see a lot of such error messages, you would see a few errors, but those are just discovery error messages. Now I'll just start this cache, and I'll show you the logs of this server as well as logs of other server, and show you how that changes. Now this has been started, so all I need to do is come back here. Let's see if it refreshes. It didn't. So I'll just come back here and have a look at the log of this server. So now 108 has been started, so you would see some more activity. Where was the last entry? Let me just have a look at that. Okay, so we had this as a last entry, right? Now join permission of 108, and it started to join in. 107 installed a view which has 107, 107 and 108. And now 108 replica would also be joining, and then you would have another view which would have 107, 107 replica, 108, 108 replica, and you would see state transfer started and ended. So everything went smooth with this server. So new server joined in, and all of this is being logged in event logs as well, as shown earlier. Now I'll just show you the log files of server 2 so that you have some detail around that. How the other server, because the other server started and server 1 was already there. So I'll show you the log files. You just started with date modified so that you have the latest file on the top. I hope I do. Where is test cache? There you go. There are other caches running on this box as well. So that's not. I think the time doesn't show right, but let me have a look. Alright, so anyways, let's use this as an example because I'm short on time, so it would take time. So 108 started, and this time it actually requested, so it must have been as of single node, right? But in this case you would actually see the join permission. So I would actually not use this. I'm not able to locate the log file for it. What's going on? Alright, right. I know what's going on. I'm looking at the local log file folder. So those must be the log files from happens. Right. So look at the date modified, and this is the actual log file. I apologize for it. All right. So now 108 started, and you could see that it actually tried, but it failed. So you would actually see some error messages here. There was this error because it's not the one. Its replica is not there, so it's not the first one. So you see that 107 is already started, so it gave it the view. And then state transfer started. These are some buckets information, and then member joined the cache cluster, right? So that's how simple it is to have a look at the log files. But like I said, these may become complex based on your use case, based on the issues that you're receiving, and we have the replica log files as well. So it's good to actually share errors with us, and we could actually help you understand it more. So each server with the timelines, you could see the issues noted down in the log files. I'll quickly come back. I have some more time left. So let me actually show you another scenario where, and let me see if I can open the monitor tool. Now there is another kind of log file which is inside the monitoring tool. So for this particular cache, let's use it. Let's create a new dashboard. And by the way, let me know if there are any questions. All right. If there's a scenario where your servers are taking more time to complete some requests, or there's a slowness, how to tackle that? So one way is that you look at the performance counters of your application, as well as the NCache performance counter, which is next section, last section to be honest. But this log file can actually help you pinpoint that. We have this API logs. So if you just open the monitor tool and drag and drop the API logs, it uses the preferences. It actually logs information here. So I'll just say enable file logging, turn it on, and then I need to run it. So you need to simulate the test. Say your test takes 15 minutes and you reproduce the issue. Or in your production environment, if there is a specific time when you see slowness, or you're not sure what application is causing slowness, what call is causing slowness, what is the method within the application which is causing slowness, you could actually pinpoint that with the help of API logs. So all you need to do is run this. It would dump all the information, and then you stop it once the issue reproduced, and then you review it either through this, where you see the timestamp, server node, client from where that request got originated, ID of the client, and the execution time. So this execution time is the most important factor here. At this point, it's in sub milliseconds. But what if we simulate a load, and we say stress test tool, again using the scenario where test cache /m 1024, and this would definitely use a value which is bigger, right? You could see 0.03, right? 0.07. So let me actually close other stress test tools. Yeah, you could see now time has gone up, right? 0.02, right? So, and you could actually see any errors which are being logged on the server side. So any failure is something that's evident, that can be logged in the log files, but the slowness can be mapped with the help of this feature. And if I take you back here in this folder API logs, there is a log file which keeps the historical track of the data. So first few averages are 0.02, 0.01, and then towards the end you would see some increased values, right? So that gives you an indication against the time that this particular call is slow. I need to verify the method, and then you need to correlate with that within your application. So I think that's something which can be used. We use this all the time for debugging our customer environments. Check the time, ask them to reproduce the issue in front of us, enable the logs, and then on top of it, this can be coupled with client-side logs as well. Inside your client installation, you could specify the logs. For example, if I go to if I go to the client portion of NCache, on the client machine where the web server is there, there is this enable logs, right? So each cache has this enable client logs flag that you can turn on. So this would actually create a log file of the client side as well, similar log file that you've seen. So I think that helps on the logging side of things. I'll take 10 more minutes and then I'll conclude on the performance counters, because that's the most important section that we have, how to do the performance monitoring with the NCache. But before that, please let me know if there are any questions. I hope it's not too much of information. I've kept it, basic, but the scenarios are something which align with your daily use cases. Now, coming back to the performance monitoring, NCache gives you two kinds of counters. These are performance counters, so you could just say perf mon and open the performance monitor inside NCache. And let me just close this right here and run a stress test tool real quick so that we save time. So if I open the performance counter, we have NCache category, right? Under NCache category, we have all the counters that we need. The averages are very important. This gives you the average amount of time for add, fetch, insert in the cache. So I'll just use all of these, right? And choose add, choose OK, and then I'll show you these performance averages. So you see average microsecond for fetch is 27 microseconds. Average microsecond per insert, it's 65 around. But what about the client? So let's have a look at the client side counters, how much time it's taking to complete an operation. So you choose NCache client category, choose test cache for the client, and then you choose add. So underneath here, you would see NCache client section as well. And this is the most important because this gives you the NCache client side performance estimation. It gives you the item size, so it's 1024. It gives you average microsecond per fetch, 718, and that's the overall time an application took to inside your application to serialize. If compression is on, to compress. If encryption is on, to encrypt, and then send it across the wire. Got stored over there, so server time is included, and then it came back and then deserialized. So that's the time of an operation. For fetch, it's just the deserialization. For insert, it's the serialization as well. And you could individually see average microsecond per serialization for inserts and average microsecond per deserialization for fetches. And you could also enable logs around these, and that's what I would actually do right now. I'll see if I can open. For some reason, Visual Studio died down on me, but let's see if I can do that. And in this particular scenario, what I have in mind is I have a web application which is all right. This is doing something. So I have a web application. I was hoping to. Okay, there's a question. Can these NCache counters be accessed remotely? Of course. I access counters from server as well as from the clients all the time. So if you have access to these servers remotely, the performance access is allowed. You can actually do that. So not a problem. So it's usually one server as a monitoring server, which takes care of all these tasks. I should have opened the monitor, the Visual Studio beforehand and spawned the application, but I didn't. So that's what is causing the issue. I hope this works this time. There you go. I think we're in. No, we're not there actually. So let me just put the directory of my project. Please bear with me. I'll just take a minute. This is a very interesting portion. I really want to showcase this. So let's see if this gets picked up. There you go. Now this application is designed in such a way that I'll be experimenting with different uh, object sizes, right? And based on that, I will log the performance counters and show you how the object size increases and how the performance drops. So that would actually present a use case in your application, how to get notified when, or how to know when there is an application issue. So what I'll do is I'll start the logging, right? So I'll just use a stress test tool to check if I'm able to connect to my cache. I'll just take 5-10 more minutes. So please let me know if we're okay on the time. If there are any issues, we can always. So I think we're good on that. I just ran it so that we have. So this should actually start my application. There you go. And now I'll use my machine right here, and I'll start the logging of performance counters. And for that, you can use actually user collector set. For real-time monitoring, performance counters are there, right? Which you could actually click on here and add them in the live. But that really doesn't help in order to tackle an issue when the application performs slowly. How to tackle that? So I'll just create a data collector set, right? Test 1 1, right? I'll create it manually. Use performance counters, and I'll use the sampling interval to be 1 second and add NCache client counters to be precise, because this is my application box. You could also use one other thing. Let me just add NCache counters, NCache client, NCache. Let me just use the stress test tool one more time so that this test cache gets initiated. There you go. Add, and I can close the stress test tool now. Choose OK. And in the meantime, I hope. All right, something went down with this. Anyways, I'll quickly choose next on this, browse and choose a friendly location which I can pick. For example, let's use this and choose OK. Next, uh, save and close. And so test 1 1 has been created. You could actually come here and start the collector set, and in the meantime, for some reason my web application didn't run, so I'll just run it one more time. Interesting. Alright, not too sure what happened. I should have actually run it. That's what I did yesterday, and it worked absolutely fine. So I'll just give it one try. I think I have some IIS, pipeline mode issue, so it's not gonna run with this. So I'll just skip this. What I can do is I can show you the the data of this, which I used from yesterday. So if I come here, uh, the design of this is in such a way that we have three kinds of tests, right? 10 kb, 50 kb, 100 kb, and 500 kb. So if you go to the 10 kb object, it actually simulates the load of get and inserts of 10 kb. So I ran it for 10 kb, 50 kb, 100 kb, 500 kb, and then I log the counters, right? So inside E, test one. These are let me just say. I think these are the counters from yesterday. Okay, there you go. So I ran this test, and I really wanted to showcase the issues. So if I just say Control A, high selected counters, and then for test cache, it actually consumes has all the other counters as well. So you first of all check the average item size. So first test ran for 1 kilobyte, 10 kilobyte, then again for 10 kilobyte, then for 50 kilobyte, then for 100 kilobyte, and then towards the end I ran it for 500 kilobyte. So that explains the item size. Now let's see the average amount of time it took for the fetch. So there is a counter called average microsecond per fetch. So you could see that it took, it got increased over a period of time, right? So fetch, and then same for these because this is same, and then as you added the item size increased, the amount of time to fetch that item also increased along with it. But what about since you're fetching it, so there should be a deserialization overhead to it, so that's covered here. So most of the time is actually spent in the deserialization of that. So you could actually plot the deserialization alongside that. So these had most of the time spent in deserialization, and that's why it's slow. Now I'll just look at the insert averages, average microsecond per insert, and you could see that that would also vary with, there you go. So we have insert taking some time, and as you added the item size increase, the insert took time. So in your application, if you see the application is slowing down, right? So you log these counters and you just check whether it's the serialization, it's deserialization, it is fetch, or it's the insert, or it's remove, or it's the request queue size which is actually growing. So each time there is an activity, there are some items in the request queue size, and you would see that those would get cleared each time you process that. So for inserts, let's have a look at the average microsecond per serialization. So that's the overhead. That's, let me just make it red and colored, and you could see that it's the serialization which is actually impacting the averages. So overall, average microsecond per insert, fetch, remove on the client side give you an estimation of the performance that your application is exhibiting, and at the same time you could log these counters and have a look at that. Unfortunately, I couldn't run my application, but this is from yesterday. I had a webinar yesterday where I successfully ran it, and we ran it with 10 KB, again 10 KB, 50 KB, 100 KB, and 500 kilobyte. So we could see the varying difference between the performances, and this is way to tackle any performance issues, that you check NCache counters, and this has to be coupled with your application counters. So you always need your application counters to be selected alongside that. For example, you could see ASP.NET counters for a web application, right? ASP.NET applications. Typically for .NET CLR memory, we also see if there's a memory contention, application can go down. So you could log system counters and then log NCache counters as I did, and then take it from there. So that completes our performance monitoring section. We're about 5 minutes above our regular time marker. I hope that's okay. Because of the issues, this is a hands-on webinar, so it is expected that you would see such issues. But just to summarize it, we went through creating a cache. We showed you the NCache monitoring tool, health, event log entries, email alerts, NCache logs, log analyzer tool, client-side API logs, and then I also showed you the performance counters which are available on the server side. Server side counters are there for server side statistics, and then client side counters are there for client side statistics. I didn't spend a lot of time in explaining those counters. I should have been doing that, but I'll do that in our next webinar for the same topic. So, and towards the end I showed you how to pinpoint any issues by using the spikes or by using the performance counter logging within NCache. I hope it was informative. It was interesting. Please let me know if there are any questions at this point. There's a question: is there going to be a copy of this webinar or the other webinars present online? Yes, I'm recording it, so I'll prepare a copy of it and then we'll share a link with you guys. Okay, there's a question. I missed some part of the beginning. Will you make the recording? Yeah, absolutely. So recording would be made available. as part of our regular webinars. What we do is we do series of two webinars, European and US, and then we record it and publish it. So yes, it would be made available, and a link would be shared with you guys. All right, guys, I think we're above our regular allocated time marker. So I would just conclude it. If there are any other questions, please send us an email. A copy of this webinar would be shared with you guys. Any detailed information around any segment that I cover today, please let me know. Send me an email at support@alachisa.com, and we'll take it from there. You could download a 60-day trial of NCache. You could schedule a tech session or a hand-holding session as needed, and we could always take it from there. I hope you liked the presentation. Give me your feedback. Share some details around any of the features that need improvement, and we could actually take it from there. So keep your questions coming. Stay tuned. There are more of such webinars which are lined up, and I hope to do more of such feature level webinars. So let me know your feedback around that as well. So towards the end, I'll thank you. I'll thank everybody who registered and finally joined. It was a pleasure presenting this webinar. I had a lot of fun. Some things don't work, but good thing that I had that running yesterday, so that section could be, was available at that time, and I used it as is. But I'll be prepared next time. So do let me know if there are any questions. Thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure. Everybody have a good day. Take care. Bye bye.